Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy started a whole new genre of rage games, featuring a unique way to move around, a large single level, and a seemingly impossible level of difficulty. The feeling when you finally reach the top in one of these games really sets it apart from others. 2 years ago I decided to make my own, so I started thinking, what could set my game apart? What are these games missing? That's better. That's right, in my game you control not one, but 2 arms. It'll be limited to controller, with each joystick controlling a different arm. So 2 years ago I started off with this prototype of the game. The player is just a circle with 2 thin capsules for arms. The arms are attached to the player with a hinge joint, and each hinge joint has a motor speed that can be used to rotate the arms. Each arm rotates itself to align with the direction the corresponding joystick is pointed in. The arms can't go through each other, so players have to carefully coordinate them. It sounds easy, but this turned out to be extremely difficult for playtesters to get the hang of already. Back at this point in development, the movement was very slow and floaty. I hadn't seen Bennett Foddy's talk about game physics, link in the description. And when you make the arms fast, the player starts to slip a lot. And this is with the friction already turned to the max value. So what do? Well, I just added more joints to the game. Every time one of your arms makes contact with the ground, it forms a joint to connect to it. It breaks under only certain conditions, like if you're moving the arm fast enough, or if it's on a surface that is too vertical, like a wall. It also gets moved around depending on where the arm touches the ground, and it switches to the other arm when necessary. This makes smaller adjustments more difficult, so to deal with this I let the player hop upward by pressing a jump button as well. So at this point you might be noticing the game has gone through a lot of graphical changes. It needed to be something that I could pull off because I'm not great at art, but I also wanted to move away from the pixel art asset packs that I was using. At one point I even tried replicating Kirby's Epic Yarns art. Please don't sue me, Nintendo. Which I came away from knowing how to use Adobe Illustrator at least. Eventually I came across the Shapes asset for Unity by Freya Homer, and I tried using it to redraw the level. You can do this by taking the points generated by the tile map collider in Unity. From there I used a polyline to go around the edge of the collider, and I used a library called Clipper2 to inset the points so the outside of the line is aligned with the collisions of the tile map. I added another polyline slightly offset to the bottom left with a different color for decoration. Then I used a polygon component to fill in the lines. For picking colors I used some themes from lowspec.com and adjusted them, and also one from Acerola's color picker for the ruins area, link in the description. For the backgrounds I used shaders from shadertoy.com with a tool to convert them to Unity's HLSL language. I also made a couple myself. I had to make a few adjustments to add variables for the size and the offset of the patterns. Now onto the level. I start the player off with a single arm and have them make their way through a small zone before getting a second arm. Giving the player 2 arms at the start ended up being too difficult for the playtesters to handle. I added a couple training exercises that helps players get over the difficulty spike of learning which arm corresponds to which joystick, including this rhythm game, collecting coins, basketball, balancing on a wheel, and even break the targets. I designed each zone to make you use both arms in coordination with each other. An example from the third zone is the wheels that make you walk smoothly to stay on top of them. I also made this shader effect to swap the colors when you move between the zones. I made some large zone defining mechanics like this giant clock area or this waterfall that's a really difficult challenge. For the most part the game is vertical, meaning when you fall you lose some progress, but you almost never fall through an entire zone. Throughout the game there are also a variety of mechanics to help limit how far you fall. A couple examples are a bird that catches you and flies you to the right in the floating islands area, or this bouncy material at the edge of the space zone that pushes you around like a pinball. Another thing I added was leaderboards that show up in the game world that let you see your rank compared to everybody else. This uses an in-world canvas that changes its location based on which point you're closest to. Another small touch is I made the player's body shake in the direction you're moving, increasing intensity the faster that you go. And if you stop fast enough, it plays a little bounce animation. To do this, I extended the Shapes plugin to handle a few extra values like skew and wind values. Every frame I update a few relevant shader variables to animate the body. Something else I do is track the player's progress through the game as a percent. I used Unity's spline package for this, but to be honest it was really laggy and I could have just used a list of points instead. To the start of the script, I basically calculate the distance traveled up until every point is reached. And every time it updates, I find the point closest to the player and check the surrounding line segments for the closest point on either segment. Then I just add the distance to the point on that line segment to the total distance traveled up until its start point. In total I ended up making 7 zones and 1 post-game zone, and I probably cut just as many. To beat the game you must climb more than a total of 1,000 meters upward, definitely making it one of the longer Fadian games out there. I'm currently working on getting replays and multiplayer into the game. By the time you see this video, these might already be out. You can try multiplayer on the beta branch right now. With all that said, there might be something you're thinking, and I've been thinking the same thing myself. The first clears of this game took about 15 hours. Only 15 hours. We can do a lot better than this. Coming soon is a hard mode version of the original map. I had to hold back from making things as hard as I wanted for the main map, so this time I won't be holding back. This time, anything I can beat is fair game. Playing right now is a preview of some of the areas I've been working on for that map. It follows the same structure as the original map, but I'm trying to significantly rework each zone. Mechanics might have their values tweaked a bit, like platforms collapsing faster, or the difficulty might be increased by having really small platforms that are hard to land on. And who knows, there might even be a new zone. If you check out the game, don't be afraid to take breaks. Climb has a really high difficulty floor, requiring you to think really intensely about coordination. Take your time adjusting to the controls, chat with NPCs, and I'll see you back at the surface. If you're interested in playing the game, please check it out on Steam. There's a lot more I'd like to add in the future, and your support really helps. Oh, and if you like Suika Game, there's also a bundle for Suika Shapes and Slime now that gives you a 20% discount. It's like Suika Game but with a bunch of shapes and modes and competitive combo-based multiplayer. And just for the record, Ludwig couldn't beat this game if he tried.
This is so hard! Fuck!